Good evening. I'd like to call the South Windsor Town Council regular meeting of Monday, December 20th to order. And I'd like for all of us to do the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I have a roll call, please?
Is it on? Okay. Councillor Evans? No. Councillor Kabowski?
Here.
Councillor Lopez? No. Councillor Paterna?
Here.
Mayor Pendleton?
Present.
Deputy Mayor King?
Here.
Councillor Kozakowski? Councillor Leidecker? Here. And Councillor Gamble.
Thank you.
Do I say their names too?
And I would like to, Mayor's remarks this evening, item number 4. I'd like to wish South Windsor a very warm, comfortable, safe, and healthy blessings over the holiday season and as we move into the new year, and wish everyone a very happy new year to come. Thank you. And item number 6 is adoption of the agenda, please. And that's Deputy Mayor King. I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, not Deputy Mayor, I'm sorry, Councillor Kabowski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for that almost promotion. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry. It was my early Christmas present.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. I took it back though, sorry.
Move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Is there a motion to adopt there's a motion, is there a second? Second. Is there any changes or amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, if I may. I'd just like to move that we move letters D, A, and H after item 13I, please.
Is there a second? Second. And any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries. And communications and reports from our town manager, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In terms of our update on coronavirus, currently the community is, we've had 2,423 total cases. We have 2,279 past the time of quarantine, which means we have 82 current individuals infected with coronavirus, and we have seen 62 individuals who have passed away. Just moving forward from there, we're currently working on trying to set up as many pediatric vaccines. I sent the council an email earlier tonight about a new pediatric clinic that's going to be set up for the 27th at Major Donnelly Park from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. They have 50 pediatric slots and 72 young adult slots. Pediatric is 5 to 11 years old, and young adults is 12 to 18 years old. We saw a real need for that at the last pediatric vaccine event that we held, so we're really hopeful that this will be pretty successful. Also, we're in the process of trying to expand our testing capacity within the community. We've seen that that's really fallen off over the last few weeks, so we're in the process of trying to do that. Unfortunately, we've been a little bit unsuccessful to date, but we're still pushing on that as hard as we can. So hopefully we'll get that taken care of. Looking internally a little bit in terms of the town staff and the town hall and all town buildings, we still require masks at this point. We are going to be looking for 4 weeks in the yellow category. We're currently in the red category before that requirement would be removed. And we've also taken our staff here at the town hall specifically because we have a number of very small departments, and we've divided basically those departments in two, so that way there's some redundancy in the event that an individual within one of our departments gets exposed and has to go quarantine. We won't have to shut down the entire department. I also wanted to make the council aware of our regional efforts. We've been meeting with the town of Somers recently. They have a need for public health services within their community. Their individual who's been providing those services to their town is in the process of retiring, and they're exploring the possibility of either entering into a regional effort with the town of South Windsor or possibly some other entity. We've had a couple conversations. My basic idea for how this would work would be similar to the way we do our regional IT program, where we offer IT services to other communities for a fee. Of course, we would be offering this at some type of fee as well, and we would need to come to all of you for approval before we were able to do that. But just wanted to get it on your plate that this is something that we are having a conversation about, and hopefully it would help us at least in terms of our costs and potentially even increasing some of our capacity within our current community as well. One last item that I did not get on the written report, but wanted to make sure you were all aware of, and unfortunately it may be kind of the theme of the evening. We recently received our police department bathroom bids. I think all of you know that we're undertaking a project to renovate our female locker rooms within the police department. Those bids came back at approximately $200,000 over budget. I did send our director of facilities back to go see if he can value engineer that project to see if we could bring that number down some. We are also exploring some different funding opportunities associated with that as well. So that's just something for you to keep on your back burner and know that we will probably be coming to you at some point if we cannot get that number down far enough. So you know, some of our conversations already, it's pretty bare bones in terms of the project. They have things like concrete floors already in there. It's not like they're doing tile or anything else. So we're going to see where we can get that to. But that's all I have for you tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Lydecker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you just tell me again the date of the pediatric clinic? I didn't catch the date.
Yeah, it's the 27th.
December 27th?
Yep.
And you said that's from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m.?
Yep.
And then is it already set for 3 weeks later again?
Yeah, so when you go in, they'll set your second shot then.
Perfect, thank you.
Deputy Mayor King?
So I just have two questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor. One, you said that the locker room came back $200,000 over budget, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, okay, just want to make sure. The second question that I have is not really related to this. However, I remember at a certain point, and I just wanted to kind of put this on your radar in regards to how people pay their taxes, so on and so forth. I remember hearing something in regards to a credit card or some type of machine that we might be able to utilize. Can you give us just an idea in regards to, I know we have a bunch of residents that say, hey, we may want to do something like that. If you had a credit card machine, we could pay that way. Pluses, minuses, I know I'm just kind of hitting you out of the blue, but something that just popped up on my...
Yeah, we've had this conversation a few times internally. So if you wanted to pay your taxes with your credit card at home, you can get online and do that through your computer at home. There is a fee associated with that at a percentage. I'm not really sure what the percentage is off the top of my head, but there is a percentage fee associated with that. We haven't gone to the on-the-counter machines yet. Because there's a couple challenges that we have associated with that in terms of the fees that come along that we would then have to pay, as well as there's a requirement. I don't remember who it's from, but there will be requirements associated with maintaining people's personal data and security issues that also provide some challenges to us. So we've kind of stayed away from it a little bit at this point, but it is something that we do continuously look into if there's a way that we can make it work.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Maniscalco, for your report.
Yep.
And moving on, we have public input. And if you could please give your name and address when you come up to the lectern. Is there anyone for public input on any items on the agenda? Good evening, Mr. Kennedy.
Madam Mayor, just a
Sir,
point of
turn
order.
your microphone on,
Thank you.
down at the bottom, and pull it closer so you're right next to it. The red, there you go, that you're on.
You're on?
Yep,
Do I look good? Thank you.
you look great.
The winter surge is here. We have two variants, Delta and Omicron. And you know the drill: hand washing, masking indoors, and vaccinations. I'd like to thank the town manager for his leadership during the pandemic times. The health and safety of the people of South Windsor is his #1 priority. So again, Mike, I'd like to thank you for all your hard work. All right, Connecticut stats. 86%, this was as last week's, 86% of the population has at least one shot, and 74% has 2. So compared to other states, that's not too bad. So I think the senior population in this town is way high. I think, Mike, is it around 90%, I think? For this, 90% for the seniors vaccinations? I think it's perhaps higher than that, yeah. So I think Connecticut's doing a good job, and I'm hoping we can survive this next 6 weeks. I had hoped that former President Trump would have urged his supporters to mask up and get vaccinated. It would have saved tens of thousands of lives. But instead, Citizen Trump continues to spread the big lie, and that's so sad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Is there any other input for items on the agenda? Come on up.
I can barely see anyone from back there, but here I am. Hope you can see me. Good evening. My name is Daria Plummer. I live at 235 Orchard Hill Drive. Mayor Pendleton, Deputy Mayor King, members of the Town Council, first and foremost, thank you for being here through all of what we're all going through. I perused the agenda tonight. I did a little light reading, all 82 or so pages of it. And one item caught my real attention, which is new business item A. I'm here to thank you and to applaud you on your foresight and your continued commitment to our school system, most pointedly to the children, the staff, and the families of Pleasant Valley Elementary School. As you know, I have been intricately involved throughout the past few years in support of all the elementary schools during the elementary schools 10-year plan referendums. I want to thank you for the leadership that you have shown in sending all phases of the elementary school plan to their respective referendums, which passed in order, and I am very proud of this, by 75%, 77%, and 88.5%. We in South Windsor indeed are very proud of our schools, and I know you are also. I wish to thank all the players who have guided the projects to completion in phases 1 and 2, which came in on time and under budget, as you often have heard from all the players. The players include, but are not limited to, Gilbane and Colliers, who have done their due justice to ensure the fact that we are on budget and on time. And most significantly, to the Board of Education, the school administration, namely Dr. Carter, and to the Public Building Commission, which I believe has probably met as often as all of you combined. And they have finished phase 2, Eli Terry and Philip R. Smith, during the pandemic, and I will again say, on time. And now here we are on phase 3, smack dab in the middle of a pandemic, as Mr. Kennedy said, that is not going away and is causing, unfortunately, change supply issues and increased costs. Your resolution tonight allows for equity in education to continue as we promised our community, and that is the Pleasant Valley rebuild. Pleasant Valley families and that portion of South Windsor have waited patiently for 7 years for their new school, which is scheduled to open August 2023. Using the unexpended bond proceeds from phases 1 and phase 2 for phase 3, in my humble opinion, is a no-brainer, is right, and is absolutely equitable. So I want to thank you for your support for our children and their learning conditions, which, as you know, because we've just completed an anniversary for Sandy Hook, are ever so vital in today's day and age, especially now when we have COVID, we have all other issues. And may each of you, to reiterate what Mayor Pendleton said at the beginning, please have a blessed and safe and healthy holiday and a happy new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Plummer. Is there any other public input on items on the agenda? Not seeing any other public input. Anyone likes to speak on items on the agenda? Not seeing any. Moving on to number 8, adoption of the minutes of the previous meetings. Councillor Paterna.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby approves the minutes of the following Town Council meeting, the regular meeting minutes of December 6, 2021.
Second.
And I hear a second. Is there any discussion? Corrections, admissions, deletions? Not seeing any? Your light's on. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries.
Abstain.
Sorry? I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Could we have a roll call, please? We have one abstention. Sorry.
Councillor Evans,
Abstain.
Councillor Lydecker? Yes. Councillor Gamble? Oh, sorry. Councillor Lopez? Not here. Okay. Councillor Kozakowski? Not here. Deputy Mayor King?
Yes.
Councillor Kabowski?
Yes.
Councillor Paterna?
Yes.
And Mayor Pendleton?
Yes. So the motion carries with one abstention. And thank you. And moving on to number 9 is communications for liaisons, officers, and boards directly responsible to the council. Do we have any reports from Councillor Lydecker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did watch, I attended virtually, essentially, the Board of Ed meeting that occurred, I think it was last week. Some of the highlights from the meeting is they did talk about the budget shortfall for Pleasant Valley. They did talk about how the town council would be the one to have to pass the resolution to use the money from the under budget projects from the first 2 schools. This additional funds can allow the project to remain on time and on budget. As we know, Pleasant Valley is extremely important in completing the 10-year plan. It is, they did report, the fastest growing elementary school district. There was some discussion from some students who discussed about what the arts mean to them and how it's impacted them. And then one of the largest takeaways, another takeaway was the enrollment levels at the schools. I do still have the slides from the Board of Ed meeting. Enrollment in South Windsor has gone up 4.3% since last year. It's the 6th consecutive year with the enrollment growth. They're talking about even at a medium enrollment model, the overall enrollment projected up in the next 5 years is 12.2%, reaching almost 5,331 students. Middle school is also growing. It should peak at about 1,400 students in the year 2029 to 2030. So essentially, South Windsor is still growing by leaps and bounds with almost 4.3% of growth. So there was a lot of emphasis on why it's so important to finish our schools. And then the last thing that they discussed of note is Dr. Carter discussed the town is now in a position to offer Old Orchard Hill back over for the Park and Rec Committee. She did state that one of the reasons they can offer it at this point is because we did purchase the land for Pleasant Valley, so Pleasant Valley can be built behind the current school so the school doesn't have to move. So there was some discussion of that as well. And those were the highlights of their last Board of Ed meeting. Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you. Are there any other reports from liaisons, officers, or boards for the council? Not seeing any. Moving on to number 10, reports from committees. I have a report from Capital. Capital had met, reviewed the projects that were brought forward by the departments, and we had a very healthy conversation on prioritizing those projects to trying to fit those projects within the budget, and Capital will be still working on those projects and figuring out the budget and bringing it forward to the council during our budget season. And that's it for me. Are there anyone else? Not seeing any. Moving on to the consent agenda. Councillor Lydecker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve agenda items 11AA through 11AB as a first reading on the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries. Moving on, it's Councillor Kubowski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion to approve agenda items 11BA through 11BG as a second reading on the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any items removed? Any names removed? None? Moving on is, can I have all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries. And moving on to 11, forgive me. Here we go. 11G or 11, yeah, 11H. Okay, nope, that's going to be, yes, 11H. Councillor Lydecker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Motion to approve agenda items 11BH through 11BN as a second reading on the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any names to be removed? Any changes? It's not seeing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any. The motion carries. Moving on to C. Are we at C now? Yes, I believe. We are at 11C, which is miscellaneous. There is none. Now we are at 12A of unfinished business. Mr. Maniscalco?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do believe you guys have a public hearing to start on this item at 8 o'clock. But I could go through just a brief explanation of what we're trying to do prior to that, if that makes sense. And then we can maybe hit the 8 o'clock time, and then we can go forward from there. Essentially, we've received a sum of money from the FEMA grants, and what we're looking to do is transfer those funds to basically cover a number of emergency management projects. I know Mr. Walter Summers is here for to kind of explain what those projects might be again to all of you if you have any additional questions.
Good evening once again. As discussed in the last meeting, the proposed projects are $10,000 for Crisis Track technology. Crisis Track is the program that we use to document all our expenses under FEMA, and that program has worked very well for us. The next part of that project is to give the tools and technology to the employees out in the field so we can collect that data for that program in real time instead of doing administratively when we come back to re-input all that data at a later date. The second project is we would like to put emergency backup generators at Flax Hill and Wappin Mews at their community houses, so we don't have to, during a prolonged power outage, we don't have to transport those people to a shelter. We can utilize their community centers to house them, hopefully temporarily or permanently at that time until the power comes back. And the third project is to work on the fire department and police radio equipment at the Sand Hill Tower. We want to replace the receive and transmit antennas and all the wiring going down into the shelter there to fix that equipment there. So those are 3 projects and that totals about 160, 140,000, I think it comes to about. Those are the three projects.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Does anyone have any questions concerning these three projects? I know you spoke with us earlier. Can I just ask, with the crisis track technology, that would be used or utilized when there is an actual crisis, in the midst of the crisis, wherever our emergency folks are at, and they can data entry right from that spot?
Correct. They can go to a tree that they're taking down or cleaning up the road, and within the technology, the use of the backpack, the dump truck, all the equipment which we get reimbursed for from FEMA at an hourly rate, plus the personnel that are on there and the amount of debris are all collected with the iPad, hopefully, that we want to purchase. Before or now, currently, we have to get all that data by paper and then input it into Crisis Track so it comes out with the FEMA forms and all that. So if we can collect that in real data, plus with photographs, which FEMA wants now, we should improve the man-hour use for that program, you know.
And
Thank you.
The important part is that enhances our reimbursements, hopefully.
Oh, it does, yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good. That's good to know. And then with the fire department radio equipment, with the police department, and you're saying radio equipment, you're just referring to the tower, not actual purchasing of radios, are you?
We are not purchasing radios. What we're doing is replacing that top antenna on the tower, and there's one transmit antenna on the tower, and all that old coaxial going down to the shed where the fire department and police department repeaters are. Yep, that's what we're replacing up there.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have any questions? Not seeing any? Thank you for coming in and explaining
Yep,
that.
I'll be here for the 8 o'clock hearing.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess we're on item 13B. Is that correct? Yes. Or is that after the public hearing? That's where we're at right now, right? 13B? Yes. Yes, go ahead.
When you approved your agenda, did somebody make a motion to amend it to do it in that order, or how did you?
We're moving A, D, and H after 13I. So 13B is still in its same location.
Got it. Okay. Then there you go.
And that would be you and Mr. Stetson.
All right, essentially what we're trying to do is we are looking at trying to apply for a hazard mitigation grant. And in order to do that, what we're going to be asking the council to do is transfer some funds from capital, approximately $77,500 for planning that we would then apply for. And then those funds would help with the design and development of the project that then gets applied to the state. These are FEMA funds that pass through the state to the town. The match, I believe, is 25 from the town, 75 from the state. And then we would be hopefully doing hazard mitigation projects throughout other areas of town. I don't know if, Vincent, if you want to explain further what those projects would be, that would be helpful.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and fellow councilors. So on August 22nd, Hurricane Henry, we experienced widespread flooding around town, and some of our infrastructure was impacted severely, specifically Chandler Drive. Approximately 40 feet of pipe was washed out. That has since been temporarily repaired. On Sealy Drive, we had the potential to lose the whole road. There's 5 houses on that cul-de-sac. So if that happened, you know, all those folks would lose all their utilities and access to and from their house. And then at VMP Pool, spring pond behind it, when overflowed into the pool, there was potential to erode around the pool. Fortunately for us, it was towards the end of the season, so they didn't lose too much usage. but the pool was filled with several inches of sediment, had to be cleaned, chlorinated, and part of this hazard mitigation grant is to bolster our infrastructure so that in the future it doesn't fail like this. There are no guarantees that it's going to work, but we went back and cambered all the locations, and it's apparent that we have some under-design issues in these locations, and it would be a benefit to invest in them to kind of insulate the town from any further losses in the future. With this grant, there's no guarantee that we'll be awarded it. I've been told that it's a very competitive project, and that they would like to see the application come through. Worst case scenario, if we invest this money, we'll have a plan to move forward once we find the funding to do it in-house. There are some broad range numbers in there. Without investing the money up front, we're really shooting from the hip about what it's going to cost at the end of the day to the town. But in consultation with our consultant, he agreed that, the $2 million for all three of these projects would be on the high end. So I'm hoping that it comes in a little bit lower, and we have a long-term plan to fund this through the CIP in fiscal year 23 and 24. It should take approximately 6 to 12 months once we make the submission to FEMA to find out whether or not we were awarded it. I welcome you guys to have any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Stetson? The Sealy Drive, does that have, does the demming and the drainage on Ridge Road and Sealy Drive have anything to do with what occurred during the storm?
So Sealy Drive is kind of a standalone area for its drainage. It's not tied into anything. And if you can visualize Sealy Drive, it's not kind of on the side of a hill. So Sealy Drive creates like a dam almost for all the uphill drainage. And there is a small pipe that just couldn't handle all that rain, and the water actually backed up all the way over. We had to put sandbags at the closest house to the street to guide the water away, and we were observing some liquefaction on the downhill side, which just shows that the whole thing was kind of liquefied. And yeah, it's a challenging problem. There's a lot of utilities in there that we would have to build around, but the idea would be to put a head wall on the upstream side and a second tier drainage pipe so that when we do get these flood events that there's enough capacity to take all the water and send it through.
And the total I see is the grant here of $77.5. Is that going to cover the cost of everything that needs to be done at these three locations?
No, this is just to apply for the grant.
And this is just for the, to apply, and it talks about a plan, to come up with some type of a plan, a preliminary design plan?
Yeah, so we've kind of held hands with the consultant and gave them our ideas for how to go about solving these issues. Obviously, they're going to do additional analysis, but the FEMA grant is a very stout grant process. The application itself, just the questions, is about 35 pages. And there is a litany of things that, unfortunately, we just don't have the bandwidth to do in-house in this project. So what they're going to do is they are going to make sure that that grant, all the boxes are checked so that it doesn't get denied just on the technicality of you didn't fill the grant out correctly. They're going to put together a construction cost estimate, which is very time consuming. They're going to put together drawings for all three locations. They're going to do hydraulic analysis on all three locations. And there's so many things that are on that list. You have to take Army Corps plates. You have to make sure that you're checking all the 7 series of FEMA impact, and is it good for the residents? Is it good for nature? It's very, very complicated, and that is why it would behoove us to hire our consultant to help us.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in and explaining that. And now, moving on,
Mayor
Do you want to,
Pendleton.
yes, go ahead.
So two items. First of all, I wanted to also mention that the $77,000 is going to be reimbursable if we do receive the grant. So part of that will be reimbursable to the town.
Okay.
The second item, we're just noticing that there's some administrative errors with the way that next resolution is put together. So I'd like to do is ask you to actually table that item. We'll come back at your next meeting and we'll do it the appropriate, take it in the appropriate
You'd like to
manner.
table 13C? Is that what
Yes.
you're asking? 13C? Could I have a motion, please?
Well, I have a few more questions.
Oh, I'm
and
sorry, go right ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I think Mr. Maniscalco just answered one of them. So part of this 77,000 we get back if we obtain the grant.
Correct.
And how much exactly is the grant for? Do we have a number for that?
So it's a very rough estimate. You know, the complete project is estimated to come in around $2 million. So 25% of that of the town would be 500,000. They would be responsible for. And within that 500,000, this initial 77,500 would be covered.
And when you say we're 25% responsible for it, I mean, that's the money, that 25% is what we're getting from the grant, or we're getting like 1.5 million and we're paying the other 500,000?
Correct.
Okay. And then it's just for these 3 projects?
Correct.
Have we identified other areas in town that could potentially fail in a future storm that we also need to address? And if so, how are we addressing those issues?
So there's ample opportunity to address our infrastructure townwide, but for this FEMA grant, you have to show evidence of loss and impact, and it needs to check certain boxes. So unfortunately, we can't blanket the whole town to fix our drainage infrastructure. It needs to be tied to, you know, whatever happened on Hurricane Henry on that date.
Okay, so it's not something that we can proactively fix. It's stuff that's already happened and that we have to fix now based on it.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And that led me to a question. Do we know where we're going to get the other $500,000?
The plan is to, Mike, you want to take this one?
There we go. I'm sorry, Steve.
Merry
I know.
Christmas.
I just wanted to follow up with that.
Yeah, so I put that on my wish list to Santa, I guess. No, I think what we would be doing is we would be going to the Capital Committee and talking about putting a funding plan together.
Okay, great. Thanks for that heads up. Deputy Mayor King.
The only question I have is in regards to, if I understood it correctly, the 77.5 is going to this Weston and Sampson?
Yep.
So do we have a timing in regards to when this design plan, this cost estimate, once it's submitted, when they're supposed to have it done?
So they are looking for a notice to proceed. We put the RFP out maybe 6 weeks ago. The grant is due on January 12th, but we have a 90-day extension that we filed with FEMA, and we should have ample time to have it submitted on time.
So just to follow up, Madam Mayor, so just so that I'm clear, the 77.5 to Weston and Sampson, so for them, January 12th, plus an additional 90 days, it has to be in order to, that's their time.
I believe FEMA has a cap of 2 90-day extensions. They've only extended it once so far.
Final one. And if we miss that, that 77.5, do we get that back from Weston and Sampson?
I don't believe so, but I wouldn't set us up to put us in a position where we wouldn't meet the deadlines.
That's fine. I just want to be clear that if we miss it for whatever the reason is, that's 77.5. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So
guys.
moving on to item 13C, we need a motion to table to the next meeting, Mr. Maniscalco? And that would be January 3rd? Okay. Go ahead.
So moved. I move that we move 13C to January 3rd.
Is there a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries. And moving past C, we moved D. Okay. So now we need E. The Strategic Planning Committee, we're moving on to 13E, a discussion item. The Strategic Planning Committee membership. And that was brought up because we wanted to go over our membership and talk about strategic planning membership. And, and Mr. Maniscalco, we have in front of us here the approved resolution where we undertook the strategic planning process. Is that one that we're discussing right now?
Correct. I believe we've given you the resolution in your packet.
Right. Could you please go over the membership,
The
Mr.
membership
Maniscalco?
section, basically, the town council shall be made up of no more than 9 members. 2 members must attend South Windsor Public Schools. 2 members must consider themselves to be senior citizens. There must be representatives from diverse gender identities, and there must be representatives from active political parties. All efforts shall be made to seek both cultural and ethnic diversity and representation. The town manager, mayor, and minority leader, or their designee, will be considered ex officio members with full rights to participate at meetings, but will have no right to vote in the process. Be it further resolved that 2 town councilors, 1 being the mayor and 1 being the minority leader, will accept nominations from the town council members and residents. And furthermore, be it resolved, the mayor and minority leader shall review nominations for this committee, bring the full list of nominations to the council for review, and bring their recommendations for the committee makeup to the town council for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Maniscalco. And I know I had misspoke. I don't know if I mentioned it at the last meeting that I had misspoke that Deputy Mayor King was going to go in my place onto this. So hearing this and knowing this, I wanted to bring this forward to the citizens of our community concerning the membership. And they now can hear, and if you could go over that again, Mr. Maniscalco, read that, what the membership would consist of and how they submit their names, please.
They would need to, there would be a total of 9 members. That membership, you want the consistency of the membership again?
Please, slowly.
Okay, so there would be 9 total members. 2 members must attend South Windsor Public Schools. 2 members must consider themselves to be seniors. There must be representatives from diverse gender identities. And there must be representation from active political parties. All efforts shall be made to seek both cultural and ethnic diversity in representation.
And the names will be submitted?
The names need to be submitted to the, where did it go?
Mayor or minority
Mayor
leader?
or minority, and/or minority leader for their review.
Bring before the council and make the recommendations to the
Correct.
council. Okay. Does anyone have any questions on the membership of this? We need to seek out some members for this so we can get the strategic planning up and running and going. Deputy Mayor King.
I'll yield to Councilman Paterna.
Councilor Paterna?
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor King. I'm just a little unclear on the last group there. There must be representation from active political parties, but it doesn't designate any number of people from parties. So I'm just wondering how we're going to have that representation without a number attached.
I think, I think the spirit of this is to ensure that you have people who are involved in different, in at least both political parties, if not more than just the 2 that are represented within the community. So, I think as you accept nominations or people volunteer to participate, I think it would be within your ability to ask them if they're a registered member of a certain party or something of that nature, and to make sure that there's, equal representation of both parties at least. Or not equal, but some representation, let's put it that way.
So it's political parties among those we have already selected as representatives, not a specific nomination from a political party.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That's great. Thank you.
That's the way I read it also, was, yeah. for the
It's
ones
a
that
little
were-
different than normal.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Are there any other questions concerning this membership? Deputy Mayor King?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The only question I have is, obviously, since we talked about this June 21st, 2021, and the undertaking of the process in 2001 and 2016, in your mind, when would you like, if you had your druthers, to have this type of a committee together by? I'd like to see if we can give us a, not so much a no-go no, but
Well, I mean, this is the second time that the council's passed this resolution and not seated the group, so I really, I mean, the sooner you get the group together, the sooner I can get a meeting going and get people together to start working on all of this. So, I mean, I think if you were to do your reviews and maybe you're making your appointment towards the end of January sometime, you know, after you, because you know, it's going to take some time to make some thoughtful appointments. I would think that if you make your appointments the end of January, we would probably have our meeting the first couple weeks of February, I would think. It wouldn't take that long.
okay. January, I'm just trying to think. Again, I just
Oh,
want to
if
try
you
and
know
give
who's
us something to shoot for and go by. That way we know whether we've attained it or not, and is the end of January enough time? This is a discussion, right? Yeah, is January enough time to kind of put this type of committee together? Because this is going to be a pretty strong committee, would you say? So I'm wondering if it makes sense to take your January and raise you February. Just so,
I'll see your February and call.
okay. Just to kind of, you know, I don't want to put us behind the eight ball, but at the same time, give us an opportunity to say, okay, let's get something going. We done made this resolution 2, 3, 4 times. Let's put some pen to paper type of thing.
Certainly.
So what would be the last, if I could, the last date in February that we would meet? No, meeting date.
Meeting date?
So by the 21st of February, is that something that we might agree on and say, okay, we should have people in place? That gives us, you know, after the new year to get everything, and Phil can change his tie, and, okay. Does that make, I'm just trying to give us some time. Okay. If we, I don't know if I need to make a motion on that, Madam Mayor, that we have some names, a committee to appoint to at least give to the town council by February 21st. Does that make sense?
Or sooner?
Yes, or sooner, or
Yes.
sooner.
Yes.
But with the date for that. Okay. I
Before we
move.
do that, could we,
Yeah.
we have more questions?
Not really a question. I just wanted to kind of like break down, because for myself, I kind of created a list of what it might look like, and I feel like that kind of helped me get a like vision of what that group might look like. And if it's a 9-member, it's 2 students, 2 senior citizens, and that leaves 5 remaining spaces for a combination where we have to make sure to cover some kind of gender diversity, gender identity diversity, cultural and ethnic diversity. Not to say that the students and the senior citizens could not be that, but I just thought it was important to kind of know like the breakdown of it. It really helped me by just making the list. So in looking for people to participate, I think it's kind of important to kind of consider, you know, what spots are already kind of filled, and we have a little bit more flexibility within those other 5 spots of our diversity.
I'm so happy you brought that up, because right before you brought that up, that's exactly what I did, was 9 members, 2 students, 2 seniors, and gives us the 5. We did the same thing, absolutely. So go right ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Leidecker?
Well, it's not necessarily a question. I'm not sure I'm comfortable passing a motion that we have to have names by the 21st. I think as a group, that should be what we strive for. But at the end of the day, we can solicit as many people as we want. If people don't want to do this, we may be struggling, and then I don't know what ramifications we have as a council saying we did not meet our deadline. So I think we should actively strive to get names as soon as possible. That's what I'm hearing from the town manager. Let's, solicit what we can, starting now, and just keep going, knowing we want to do this ASAP, but I just don't want to put a deadline on us if we can't find people to fill those seats. But I think it should be something we can put back on, maybe our last meeting of January, just to get an update. Oh, hey, we're about half full, we've got some nominations coming in, so we can stay on top of it that way. I just don't like a motion for a deadline. That's just my 2 cents.
Deputy Mayor
No,
King?
that's fair. That's fair.
Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any. So now we know, and the sooner we can get names in, the better, and we can move along. That's great. Now that we all understand the membership requirements of this. So it was a little tough one there to understand, but thank you. Okay, moving on the agenda. Now we are on F, please, and that is Councillor Paterno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a resolution approving the South Windsor Citizen Matching Mini Grant Program. Excuse me. Whereas the South Windsor Town Council created a South Windsor Citizen Matching Mini Grant Program on June 20th, 2005. Whereas Wood Memorial Library is requesting a South Windsor Citizen Matching Mini Grant in the amount of $5,000 for tree stump excavation and a landscaping site plan to connect the parking lot to the ADA elevator entrance in a safe and welcoming way. And whereas the town manager, Michael Maniscalco, has reviewed and approved this project, an application has been determined that it meets all the criteria of the South Windsor Citizen Matching Mini Grant Program. Now therefore be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby authorizes town manager Michael Maniscalco to issue $5,000 of matching funds to the Wood Memorial Library from the South Windsor Citizen Matching Mini Grant Program to help fund this project.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
Madam Mayor, I just want to start the discussion by saying you have in your packet some description of the grant, some photos of the landscaping area, and you can see the entrance where that doorway is where the elevator is, and that is the ADA accessible entrance for Wood Memorial Library. So I'm happy to support this grant. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any. The motion carries. 13G, Councillor Kabowski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Resolution approving the transfer of $5,000 from the contingency account to the South Windsor Mini Grant Professional Account. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby approves the transfer of $5,000 from the contingency account to the South Windsor Mini Grant Professional Account to cover costs associated with the Citizens Matching Mini Grant Program.
In hearing a second, any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any. The motion carries. Okay, now we're in the agenda. We have 5 minutes before our public hearing. We could pull J, or we could pull K out. If someone would like to suspend the rules and pull K out. And L. We can get those done before our public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to suspend the rules and move item 13K up to this point in the agenda.
And L.
And item L, K and L.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item 13K, Councillor Lydecker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Resolution approving a refund of taxes to 35 South Windsor taxpayers. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby approves a refund of property taxes to 35 South Windsor taxpayers the total of said refunds being $8,744.54, and is more fully described on attached Exhibit A.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Councilor Paterno, no? Okay.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not hearing any, the motion carries. Item 13L, Councilor Evans.
Resolution accepting the resignation of Joshua Johnson from the Mass Transit and Highway Advisory Commission. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby accepts with regret the resignation of Joshua Johnson from the Mass Transit and Highway Advisory Commission, effective November 18th, 2021. And be it further resolved that the South Windsor Town Council extends its thanks to Joshua Johnson for the time he has dedicated to serving his community by his membership on the Mass Transit and Highway Advisory Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? None? Okay. Councilor Paterno.
I just want to add my thanks to Joshua Johnson and his work on the Mass Transit and Highway Advisory Commission. If you read his resignation letter, he's very gracious in his recognition of the work of the other members of the committee and the leadership of Karen Wagner as the chair of that commission. I think we're going to miss a great person who worked hard for this Mass Transit Advisory Committee, and I hope he comes back in some other way to work for the town. Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you, Councilor Paterno. Thank you, Joshua, for your time dedicated to South Windsor that you put into mass transit, and South Windsor appreciates you. And any more discussion? No, not seeing any. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries. And now we just have to wait until 8 o'clock. We're up to our public hearing piece. Yes? Okay. We have 2 more minutes. So should I recess for 2 minutes, Mr. Maniscalco? I'd like to recess the meeting for the next 2 minutes until 8 o'clock for the public hearing. Thank you. Yes. No, the first one is on the transfer of the FEMA money. So I'd like to call the public hearing back to in session at 8 p.m. Could we please have for the public hearing, have the notice please read?
To be published in the Journal Enquirer, December 16th, 2021. Legal ad, Town of South Windsor. Notice is hereby given that the Town of South Windsor Town Council has set Monday, December 20th, 2021 at 8 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall, 1540 Sullivan Avenue, South Windsor, Connecticut, as the time and place for a public hearing to receive citizen input on the transfer of $140,000 in FEMA Storm Isaias reimbursement monies to 3 emergency management projects. Dated at South Windsor this 15th day of December 2021. Attested to by Catherine Senerth, Executive Assistant.
Thank you. And calling the public hearing to order, is there anyone here that would like to speak on this topic? Asking again, is there anyone who would like to speak on this topic? Not seeing any. One more time. Anyone like to speak at the public hearing concerning the transfer of funds? Not seeing any. And normally, typically, we do a straw poll to see who is in favor of the resolution or the moving of the funds. Is anyone out there that would like to raise their hand in favor of the public hearing? 6. Thank you. Anyone opposed? Seeing none. Thank you. That was a 6-0. And now, just give me one second. The public hearing is closed. And moving on to, would we like to move on to item H, which is in the agenda? That is the transfer of the ECES funds. Is that what we're doing? No? Which item, please? I. Item I. Because we have another public hearing at 8:15, so we're going to take item I at this time. Item I is a discussion item for the Park and Rec Temporary Committee and membership. And Mr. Maniscalco, could you please address that?
Certainly. In the resolution, the committee shall consist of 7 voting members with no more than a bare majority being from one single political party. 1 member shall also be a member of the Public Building Commission and bring experience in design and building of public facilities. 1 member shall be from the Parks and Recreation Commission, who will bring an understanding and knowledge of the community's recreational needs. 5 members shall be voting members of the community and must have experience in planning, building, architecture, design, and recreation. A member of the town council from the majority party and minority party shall be ex officio members with the right to speak at meetings but not vote. The town manager and/or his designee shall also be ex officio members with the right to speak at meetings but not vote.
And Mr. Maniscalco, with that said, any names that are going to be submitted shall be submitted in what fashion, please?
We could take applications or names to the mayor or to myself, to my office, I'm sorry. Shall be received by December 20th to the town manager so that they can meet in January to begin conducting business. So those names were supposed to come to my office by now. I think we've only received 1 at this point.
Right, and I don't see that email in my packet for some reason. I'm sorry. I submitted 1 name to you, sir.
Correct. That's all we have.
Do you have that email?
I would have to go back.
And it's also been advised that we hold off until we have all the names.
At least a majority, or so that they can actually sit as a quorum.
As a quorum, sit as a quorum, correct.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor?
Absolutely, Councillor
Yes.
Paterno.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Maniscalco, would it be appropriate to say, and ask people to submit names or submit nominations to you and have a date, say by February 7th, so that we'd have a date that we can begin to publicize and then still have time to get moving right after February 7th. We could appoint those people at that meeting.
We,
Would that time frame work for you?
that would work perfectly fine, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for some reason, it's not pulling up the other name right now, but I can, when I get back to my office at the computer, I'll email it to everybody.
I know, excuse me, I know that name in that email was forwarded on to the council members.
Oh, okay, so if you guys already got it?
You
okay.
guys haven't, so we'll hang on to that until, and there is a connection there with the skills of this person with the requirements of the membership.
I
So we
believe they
can
have
hang-
some parks and recreation skills or
Yep.
connection.
So we can handle that. Does anyone have any questions concerning the membership or the consistency of the membership?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I know we mentioned the Public Building Commission, so would it make sense to ask for the chair of the Public Building Commission to actually be part of this working committee?
The chair, or maybe if the chair has a recommendation for somebody else, certainly I think it would make sense for somebody from the council to reach out to them for a recommendation.
So if we could at least contact the chair and then see what they recommend. Okay, thank you.
Be here tonight. We can ask them tonight. There you go. Catch them tonight. Go ahead, Councillor Kubowski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just looking for clarification. It says 5 members shall be voting members of the community. What does that mean? Does that mean like essentially we could have 2 members who are high school students and not registered to vote?
Well, a voting member of the community is somebody who owns $1,000 of real property and is registered with the registrars. So, I mean, I guess if you wanted to appoint a high school student, I don't think you'd be able to.
So it would have to be somebody who is, 5 members would have to be folks who are registered to vote in town with the registrar's office.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Okay, that's kind of, I think that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Councillor Evans?
So does that mean that 2 of them do not have to be? Because if 5, it's 7 people, right?
Correct, there's 7, but the other 2, one has to be from the Public Building Commission, the other one has to be from Parks and Rec. So unless you have
Which would
somebody
be-
who's not a,
But which would, the people on those commissions would already be voting members of the community.
correct.
I'm not following.
So not that I'm assuming we would try to put someone in that's not a voting member of the community, but I just think like that creates a kind of an open door.
There's a gray hole, I guess I would call it.
Yes. And I like my black and white and not my gray, so. So I don't know if there's a way to change that and just say all members shall be voting
Well,
members of the
I guess
community?
I'm not following is there a wish of the council to appoint somebody who's not a voting member?
Well, this is a resolution that we've already voted on.
I understand that, but I
Right.
mean, you could go back and you could amend it,
Correct.
if you wanted to, if there was a desire to appoint somebody who's not a voting member of the community.
I think Councillor Kubowski has some input on this.
I would just recommend if we want to go down the road of where the 5 we should say the 5 remaining members shall be voting members of the community. I think it's a little confusing, and I agree with Councillor Evans. If you read it, you can easily say, well, the member of the Public Building Commission and the other member on here, they're both voting members in the town, so therefore we have 2 openings for folks who are not registered to vote. So I think to alleviate any confusion, if we said 5 remaining members shall be voting members, I think that kind of clears that up.
Councillor Evans, could you work on, would you mind working on that and bringing that back at our next meeting so we can clarify this original
think-
resolution that we've,
I think Phil's recommendation solves the issue, just adding the word remaining.
but it has to come back. Tonight
It'd
is
have to
just
come
an
back 'cause-
example. It has to come back. Tonight it's already been voted on, and it's only on here as a discussion item.
No
We need to
problem.
bring it back with an amendment to the resolution. Is that acceptable to everyone? Yes? All right. Thank you. Okay. So 13I was just a discussion item. Is there any more questions concerning the membership or appointment of this committee?
The only other thing I would follow up with, Madam Mayor, is that the appointment of members to this committee is pretty important due to the clock is ticking on our time in Wapping for the Parks and Recreation Department. So we do need this committee seated as soon as possible, and they need to get their work done.
So both this one and strategic planning need, the strategic planning committee both need members. We need to get busy in the month of January locating
I would say the
volunteers.
clock is ticking faster on this one than the strategic
Correct.
planning one, but yeah, they're both important.
Okay, all right. So is there any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Oh, yes, we do. I'm sorry, Councillor
Sorry.
Evans.
Thank you. So just like Councillor Leidecker had brought up before, like if we had passed a motion and included a date previously, now this motion has a date in it that we have not met. So do we amend that in our future resolution? Okay,
You could do that,
all right.
since we
So
didn't
when-
meet that date.
So would that be by our second meeting in January? So January 17th?
18th.
Oh, thank you. Holidays, 18th. Okay. Thank you.
I get the 17th off. It's my birthday. No. Okay. So, and we just want to put, as Councilor Paterno had mentioned, for the February meeting, we don't want to put anything in there for the February meeting, but just verbally right now, just say that we'd like to have some membership names by February?
You're talking about for this resolution?
Yes.
I think my preference, I mean, it would be to make it sooner to try to hold ourselves accountable. I think we tried to hold ourselves accountable for December 20th, and I think we should try to maintain that and aim for that January date would be what I would like to aim for, if everyone agrees, rather than waiting until February.
Okay. Any other comments? No, we're good? Okay. Okay, so we have I done now. So we have another public hearing here at 8:15, and it is like 1 minute to 8:15. Okay, so I'd like to hear the legal notice, please read for the public hearing of 8:15.
To be published in the Journal Enquirer, December 16, 2021. Legal ad, Town of South Windsor. Notice is hereby given that the Town of South Windsor Town Council has set Monday, December 20th, 2021 at 8:15 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall, 1540 Sullivan Avenue, South Windsor, Connecticut, as the time and place for a public hearing to receive citizen input on amendments to Ordinance 141, Agricultural Land Preservation Advisory Commission, a copy of which is on file in the office of the town clerk. Dated at South Windsor, Connecticut, this 15th day of December 2021. Attested to by Catherine Senner, Executive Assistant.
Thank you. And now the public hearing is open. Is there anyone that would like to speak concerning the topic of the public hearing? The Ordinance 141. Anyone like to speak in the public hearing for Ordinance 141 and the changes? Going one more time. And we will be addressing this later on in our agenda. Would anyone like to speak on 141? Not seeing anyone. The public hearing is closed. We'll take a straw vote in favor of moving on with these changes. You can raise your hand. I see 5 hands, 6 hands. Any opposed? Not seeing any. Thank you. The public hearing is officially closed. Okay. Now we're moving to item, help me out, D, I do believe. Item 13, is it 13D? Yes. Yes, 13D, please. Is a discussion item. Mr. Maniscalco?
Hang on 1 second.
It's on page 8.
Yep. 13D. I believe the chair of the Public Building Commission is here for 13D, correct? For your discussion item? With
Please.
Mr. Montana, if he wants to.
Good evening, Mayor Pendleton, Town Council members. My name is Matthew Montana. I'm the Acting Public Building Commissioner.
Mr. Montana, could you please speak into the mic, pull it closer to you? You're
Sure
more
thing.
than welcome to move that to get it, there you go. Thank you.
Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Sure. Tonight, we're going to bring up various speakers. If we could, just wait and ask all the questions at the end, that would be most helpful. We are here to advocate for the pathway laid out by Bond Council for funds that can be transferred to the Phase 3 school to keep us moving forward and on schedule. I'd like to introduce Mark Slenka from Collier's Project Leaders, whom the PBC hired as the owner's representative.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, Mayor Pendleton and members of the council. Again, my name is Mark Skolenka, Managing Director with Collier's Project Leaders. Alongside my colleague Chuck Warrington, who you'll hear from later, and other support staff members, we've had the distinct pleasure of representing South Windsor on the 10-year school program starting back in 2014. The three pillars that we utilize for project management is to ensure that the management of the cost, the quality, and the schedule is adhered to. Utilizing proactive measures, South Windsor's first two phases, or three schools, finished on time within the quality standards they were looking for and significantly under budget. During the course of the project, Colliers shares detailed financial reports to the Public Building Commission, always staying on top of all financial matters. We document what money has been spent, what is about to be spent, and what possibly could be spent over the course of the project. Fortunately, for the first two phases, we've seen no major financial surprises other than finishing significantly under budget, nearly $3 million. But we're not here alone. We've had the great benefit and fortune of working with Dr. Carter, the various PBC members and chairs, including Mr. Matt Montana, and of course the South Windsor Board of Ed on the overwhelming success of the program. All key contributors towards the success of this program. And of course, working alongside us in the town of South Windsor is the state of Connecticut and the Office of School Construction Grants and Review, a very key stakeholder in any project. The state has contributed nearly $37 million towards the first two phases of the project, the first three schools. The state of Connecticut works directly with the school superintendents of any district, not just South Windsor, to ensure that their money is being spent wisely and within the state guidelines. The superintendent is considered the point of contact with the state of Connecticut. The superintendent signs many important documents that get submitted to the state. And quite honestly, over the last several years, the state of Connecticut has looked at South Windsor as the gold standard for school construction in Connecticut. When other districts reach out to Hartford on guidance and talking about their plans, they will often refer them to Dr. Carter for suggestions on best practices. With that, I'll turn it back to Mr. Montana. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Another PBC member and Board of Ed chairperson of the evening is Craig Zimmerman. Craig?
Thank you. As a member of the Public Building Commission and the chairman of the Board of Education, I really appreciate the opportunity to make a few comments tonight in support of the proposed request concerning the funding of the new Pleasant Valley School. I want to remind everybody that our three new elementary schools that have already been built, including two during the pandemic, you're going to hear that often, were built on time and under budget. This is due to the expertise, the hard work, the planning, and teamwork of the following people, and I apologize if I've left anybody out. Dr. Carter, her administration, and all the teachers and staff, Daria Plummer and her PAC, all our building professionals, the Public Building Commission, the Board of Education, the Town Council, various town staff, both current and past, our strong working relationship with leadership at the state, the approximate 80% of the people who voted in favor of these schools, and all our taxpayers. I'd also like to personally thank Councillor Phil Kabowski, a former chairman, regular member, and town council liaison to the PBC, and former Mayor Andy Paterna, who was also a longtime liaison to the PBC. They both are very knowledgeable about the very detailed process followed by all of our educational staff and building professionals. As most of you know, the new Pleasant Valley School is scheduled to open in August 2023. I really believe that we have a covenant, a responsibility to all of the Pleasant Valley students and families, along with all of the voters and all the taxpayers, to get the school we promised them during the referendum process built on time. To be clear, we're committed to giving the Pleasant Valley students and families the same high-quality elementary school as the rest of the town, including, if at all possible, important finish standards and educational space. Your support of our proposal tonight is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. The PBC has been very privileged to have several project professionals involved with all three phases. These individuals and companies provide leadership, assistance, and guidance to the PBC throughout the construction process. Charles Warrington of Collier's Project Leaders was involved early on with the South Windsor School Master Plan, and he's continuing on to manage the school of all three phases. Chuck?
Good evening, everyone. Chuck Warrington. I'm a Director of Project Management with Collier's Project Leaders. I've had the pleasure of working with this town, the Board of Ed, and the PBC since April 2014. About a year after I started, we were formerly Strategic Building Solutions. Since that time, with my colleague Mark, I've been intimately involved with these projects. When I say intimate, we manage the budget through Orchard Hill. I probably reviewed almost every single invoice that went through the PBC, ultimately to the town for payment, and ultimately closing that project out with OSCGR, preparing reimbursement requests. So intimately involved with every single number and penny that's gone through your budgets. Same goes for phase two. I constructed those budgets for your approval through the Board of Ed, so I'm intimately involved. How do we create those budgets? Luckily, we had a successful referendum, and again, went through a process where we came in on time and on budget, not only on one school, but two schools, ultimately having 3 under budget. That process didn't happen by accident, and it was very thought out at Collier's. As my colleague Mark said, we focus on cost, quality, and schedule. It's the same routine every single project. It doesn't change. We go through 3 different iterations of estimates. We check it against the budgets that are created at the beginning of the project. Those budgets don't change. You can ask any of the PBC members. Councillor Kabowski's been through it. That stays the same. We hold all our professionals to that, as well as the project itself. And that's what's led to the success through phase 1 and phase 2 of having $3.1 plus million of savings to date. Obviously, we're in COVID right now, and we went out to bid on this project, and we're over budget right now by about $4.4 million. Very disappointed that, of course, but it's something that's uncontrollable. But the process that we went through for the first 3 schools was the same for this one. We didn't change it. We designed it, we stopped, we estimated 3 different times, we reconciled, we did value management, value engineering, if you've heard that, and really right-sized this project the best we could to fit in with the budget, keeping with the quality and maintain it on schedule. One of the big questions coming into tonight is, what is the projected savings? I'm confident to say that I probably know these numbers probably better than anybody in the town and the project professionals, because I've built the budgets, I've managed the budgets, I've reviewed the invoices. As my colleague Mark said, every single month we provide a financial status report to the building committee showing where we're projected to, what the exposures are, and what our projected savings are. And fortunately, with conservative fiscal responsibility, we got through those. And that's where we're going today. I feel confident in the number that we're reporting from Colliers. We just did a recent reconciliation in cooperation with Patty Perry, Director of Finance. She provided us your general ledgers. Our financial analyst went through line by line through your general ledger against our financial reports, and we reconciled within 4 cents on one project in phase 2 and 0 cents on the other one. We know where every penny's at. Orchard was closed out long ago, so that's already been reconciled. So our level of confidence in that reporting is high. We've taken into account every single exposure that we have. We're pretty much closed out with Gilbane. With them, we have less than $40,000 in outstanding open purchase orders to pay off for miscellaneous FF&E, probably $15,000 of which is for Colliers for the final closeout. And we've actually returned money to the town in our contracts that we're not forecasting to use for it. So again, we've accounted for all the encumbrances moving forward, and we feel confident in that number. Given our climate, and Nick Conti from Gilbane is going to allude to this, we feel it's important to move forward quickly and swiftly with the execution of our guaranteed maximum price proposal, which is for the construction contract with Gilbane. We're only going to see increases moving forward. We're not going to go down. Nick's going to allude to a couple of correspondence he's received from manufacturers. Earlier this year in other districts, there were delays to the GMP signing, and those also went up earlier this year. So we feel it's in the best interest of the town of South Windsor to hopefully transfer these dollars into the project so that we can move forward in a fiscally responsible manner as we have for phase 1 and phase 2, and in good standard practice for construction projects, so that should we see unforeseen conditions on the site, we've done a lot of borings, we've done a lot of testing, soil sampling. That's our biggest exposure to any new project. We feel it's necessary to have that in place so that if something does come up that we can't see in the ground, we can handle that swiftly and keep moving forward with the project and stay on budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. As a Connecticut state licensed architect, I have witnessed the current price escalations and product availability shortfalls on projects here in Connecticut, as well as projects I'm working on elsewhere out of state. The PBC hired Gilbane Building Company to do early construction management services and to construct the PV elementary school. Nick Conti is a senior project executive with Gilbane, and he can assist with how the bid packages came back and what challenges they are seeing for acquiring materials for PV. Nick?
Good evening, Mayor Pendleton and members of the Town Council. As Matt mentioned, my name is Nick Conti, project executive for Gilbane Building Company, who is the construction manager for the Pleasant Valley project, and as Chuck mentioned, for the previous 3 schools as well. I'd like to take a minute just to discuss as Matt mentioned, the construction cost and as Chuck mentioned, the total project budget, but the construction cost portion of that budget. In mid-November, just a few weeks ago, we took 153 bids for the 31 bid packages that we put out to bid on the street. That is a tremendous amount of bid coverage or bidder participation. When we receive that many bids, it is clear to us that the market has spoken, and the current cost that we're forecasting for this project is the cost. However, that isn't today's cost. That's the mid-November of 2021 cost. Based on what we're seeing in the marketplace and based on notices that we receive often from manufacturers, we will not be able to buy the current design for this project 2 months from now for the same price. The market is that volatile, and it is consistently rising over the last few months. Just this past Friday, we received notification from one of the nation's largest drywall manufacturers that their drywall pricing as of January 3rd, 2022 will increase by 30% across the board. that is not unique to the drywall industry. That is, we're seeing that across all the construction industry in terms of materials and equipment pricing. As Chuck mentioned, executing the GMP, or the Guaranteed Maximum Price, allows us to get the bidders under contract and maintain the mid-November 2021 pricing. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. As Chuck mentioned, the PBC goes through exhaustive budget reviews and checks at the end of each school design phase: schematic design, design development, and construction documents. At previous school designs, we've had to reduce programmatic elements, site work reduction, selection of different finishes, and building products. Phase 3 has gone through this same process of cost savings, product substitutions. It's only because we were conservative and built 3 schools on time and under budget that we come to you asking to use those savings to assist us with Phase 3. Kate Carter, Superintendent of South Windsor Schools, can assist with our current influx in enrollment and stress the importance of opening the school on time and the effects that happen if we don't. Kate?
Good evening, Mayor Pendleton, Deputy Mayor King, and Town Council members. Tonight, you met the team that delivered 3 schools, as you've heard, on time and under budget, 2 of which opened during a pandemic. It's important to note the reason we were under budget for the first 3 schools, and that was due to the expertise of our project professionals and the excellent stewardship of the Public Building Commission, led by former Chairman Phil Kabowski and more recently by Chairman Matthew Montana. I feel compelled to take this opportunity to publicly recognize the countless volunteer hours that Mr. Montana has given to our current Phase 3 project, Pleasant Valley Elementary School, the topic of tonight's discussion. The chair of the PBC, the chair of the Board of Education, Gilbane Construction Company, and Colliers are all advising that following the path described in the resolution written by town's bond counsel, Attorney David Panico, is in the best interest of the town and the project. As superintendent of schools, I am also advocating for this pathway because it is proactive and transparent. This is important for 2 stakeholders, the South Windsor community and the Office of School Construction Grants and Review. I cite our residents as the first important stakeholder, as I believe that our commitment to transparency is part of the reason for the overwhelming support of the Pleasant Valley referendum in March 2020. When the 10-year plan was adopted, some were worried that Pleasant Valley would suffer from waning support, as 3 other school communities would have already benefited from a new school. Interestingly, the opposite occurred, and Pleasant Valley had the largest margin of support, with 88.5% of the residents who voting in favor. Our project professionals tell us that this margin of support is unheard of. I contribute this margin of support to our community believing that we could be trusted to deliver what we said we were going to deliver on time and as highlighted tonight under budget. I value our community's trust and believe will be best safeguarded by following proactive and transparent approach now. The second stakeholder group to consider is the state. The estimated collective reimbursement from the state for the 4 schools within the 10-year plan is over $50 million. The state clearly has a financial stake in the successful execution of this plan. To date, the state has viewed our team as highly responsible, and our projects have successfully withstood the intense scrutiny, and I stress that, intense scrutiny, the state applies to them. I know the state would be concerned if we deviated from our long-standing reputation for following responsible project management practices. Finally, the importance of remaining on schedule cannot be overstated. As the fastest growing K-12 school district in Connecticut, it is critical that Pleasant Valley open on time so the building can meet the needs of its growing population, a school that is already reliant on 12 portable classrooms. It is also essential that the preschool move from Timothy Edwards Middle School to Pleasant Valley as scheduled so that the middle school can access the classroom space it requires to house its growing population. On behalf of the 675 Pleasant Valley students and 110 preschool students who will benefit from the much-needed new school in 2023, I sincerely thank you for your ongoing support as our town leaders have championed a plan designed to benefit all South Windsor Elementary School students. I will now turn things back to Chairman Montana.
Thank you, Kate. The PBC is tasked with signing a GMP with Gilbane this Wednesday evening in order to keep the current pricing and to meet the project schedule. We need your assurance that the funds from the previous phases can be allocated towards Phase 3. At this time, we'd like to answer any questions the Town Council members may have regarding the design, construction, school funding process, and necessity of these additional funds at the outset of the Pleasant Valley Elementary School.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, and Dr. Carter for presenting your cases this evening and explaining this to us. We really appreciate it, and thank you for coming from the PBC and your volunteer hours that I know we all put in, so thank you. Councillor Lydecker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have more of a comment, less of a question. I am a PV parent. PV is very near and dear to my heart. My child, I have two there. One is in 5th grade. When my son started in kindergarten, so 6 years ago, there was 3 kindergarten classes. They are now 6, I believe. There was 350 kids in kindergarten. When I just hosted the book fair, it was 647 kids currently at Pleasant Valley now. So we have doubled in size in almost 6 years. More of a perspective is they used to be able to host blue and gold assemblies and put everybody in the gym. It got so large they couldn't fit all the kids in the gym that they had to split up the assemblies into 2 different sessions on opposite weeks. Pleasant Valley is bursting at the seams, and this is a district that has waited for 7 years for this, and the equality of that Pleasant Valley staff who goes above and beyond on a regular basis, and I'm not saying the other schools don't. I'm a Pleasant Valley mom, that's all I know. But this is a necessity for that school, for how much this school has increased in the 6 years that my children have been there. And again, on a personal note, my youngest will be a 5th grader at the brand new Pleasant Valley, and he may be a little nervous for a brand new school to transition to, but I'm ecstatic to see what's coming down the pike for this district who has waited for 7 years. So I understand everybody's here talking about schematics and numbers, but when you look at the reality of Pleasant Valley, the growth that has happened in this school, I just want to make sure we're putting a face on what's happening inside the school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor King.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the comments and the reporting. I live right down the street on Ellington Road, so I'm firsthand in regards to everything that goes on at that school, more or less. I met the principal on more than one occasion. She came from the greater Hartford area. I appreciate everything that she's about. The questions that I had were probably more general just from my knowledge and maybe for knowledge of the town people, because when we signed the referendum, and I should probably preface this, I'm down. Let's make it happen. Right? So let me be clear on that for everybody that's nervous about, oh my gosh, what's happening tonight? So I'm down with it. I just have some questions to make sure that our town recognizes what we're talking about, because that referendum, as was so eloquently said, we're talking about 7 years. And so some people that moved here, they weren't a part of that, they don't know. So that's something we've kind of left out in regards to everything else. How did we get here? What's been going on? So when are we, if you will allow me just some questions here. If everything was everything, when are we supposed to break ground?
Next month.
Next month?
Correct.
So January 29th. Again, these questions are what some people who ain't been around don't know that. So we're talking about a lot of money. So January 29th, we are supposed to break ground. January 29th. Traditionally, and I have some of these numbers, whether it's Orchard Hill, Eli Terry, Philip R. Smith, and the monies and phenomenal job in regards to the savings that has happened, because that's not easy, right? Traditionally, though, from my knowledge, again, when we have excess money, does it just go back into a general till, or is it just allocated per school? So when we set up the referendum for the building and so on and so forth, as I'm just throwing out a general number, is it, when we do the referendum, it's $10 million for Orchard Hill, we save $2 million, so it only costs us $8 million to build, we give that money back to the town, or does that stay with Orchard Hill?
Everybody's looking at me. So essentially what happens is the community has approved a certain dollar amount that it wants to issue in bonds, which is basically issuing debt. It's like taking out a mortgage on that piece of property. As the thing with bonding is that you cannot overbond. There can be penalties associated with that, and it's not a good thing to have happen. So as we go through the project, what myself and Mrs. Perry does is we'll get cash flow notices and notices of what kind of funds both Mr. Warrington and the Public Building Committee need from the town in order to pay the different contractors as we go forward. So as we get those notices in, we'll either float short-term notes, which are, about 12-month term, and we have to pay interest on those notes over that 12-month term. That interest typically comes from the project budget. Or what we did most recently, because we have such favorable bonding numbers right now, we've, with the market being the way it is, we actually issued long-term bonds. But we don't want to issue them over the amount that's actually going to be used. So when those projects come in under budget, we've never actually issued that debt. So there's no actual issuance of those money. So those are called authorized but unissued bonds that are sitting out there still ready to go. So what is actually happening is the Public Building Committee and the Superintendent, Board of Ed, and all the other project professionals are coming to you asking you to transfer those authorized but unissued bond funds to the Pleasant Valley School project. Now, as they come through with their different recommendations for cash flow, we will issue those short-term notes. We'll then roll those short-term notes into bond funds after 12 months as we see that going, with the intent of whatever the exact number is for that project, we will have issued that exact amount in debt.
So as a follow-up, just so that I'm clear, again, for town knowledge, so we have this amount of money, and it's just broken down, but it's not necessarily it's just as we build, then we issue it.
No, so the town has approved specific dollar amounts associated with each of these projects.
Right.
We do have a total amount, if you put all three phases together, of $160 some odd million, but it is broken specifically into those specific amounts. For example, Pleasant Valley is $58,500,000.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Councillor Kabasky?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Montana, could you or one of the professionals who are here tonight give us an explanation as to what would happen in the bidding process if we didn't move forward with signing the GMP come Wednesday?
I can give you my opinion, but I'm going to look at this Nick.
The bid prices that we took in mid-November would expire, and we would have no contractors to sign up and execute the work. We would have to put the project back out to bid.
So at that point, we would probably see an increase then on top of what we're seeing already.
Yeah, safe to say there would be an increase, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor King?
So I'm clear for the town, just to make sure from the mic standpoint, we don't sign tonight, the money goes up. No, I just want to be clear. So, okay, what is the date that needs to be signed before this inflation happens? Potential inflation, because I do believe it will happen just because of COVID and all the other supply chain issues.
The PBC, we're looking to sign Wednesday night. Wednesday night, we have a meeting to sign the GMP, which would lock in the numbers that were currently bid. And as Nick said, the numbers that we received back in November,
right,
you couldn't build it today. So we're locked in for those numbers we'll have Wednesday night.
And based off of what the superintendent said, just so that it sounded like whether it's the state and everyone else, and again, I'm in full agreement with moving forward on this, that we have a lot of credibility. That credibility doesn't extend past Wednesday, like, hey, we're gonna move forward. No, I'm sorry, we don't take your word for it, even though we've done all this other building?
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Am I right?
Okay.
You know about your
So all of
project,
that
but
credit really just kind of, thank you.
The credit comes about in that we've done a fantastic job as a town for getting the buildings done on time, on budget, like you've heard a million times. But to Gilbane's point, where they've been on for each phase, we've had a tremendous amount of people coming to want to bid on these projects. They're very, very favorable. So when Nick spoke of the 173 something bids, it's unheard of to have that many bids on a project. But once you start going through and taking the lowest qualified bidder for each phase, we, as Nick said, we're still $4 million over on the market today.
Mm-hmm.
That market today, if we rebid it again, like you were asking, Phil, it would be higher in January, much higher. You know, due to some of the increases, the 30% with sheetrock, just that's one building material gone up, like we all saw before with plywood went up. It's like that now going across the board. And where my background as an architect, I could attest to you on a whole bunch of projects where roofing materials, siding, just things you use every day, PVC, you can't find the building products, and they've just been escalated. You know, the inflation on it is just through the roof.
Okay. So again, just to be clear, Wednesday night, no sign, price up.
No, not necessarily. I don't think we're looking for something written in stone that money is going over to the project tonight. If we can sign on Wednesday night, but we're looking for a comfort level, and I think I speak for the rest of the team, please jump up if you don't agree, looking for a comfort level that money will be transferred over to the Pleasant Valley project very soon, so that we can, in good conscience, proceed responsibly with the project. At the current value, and without knowing that money is coming, it would not be responsible for us to sign that GMP Wednesday night.
Awesome, thank you for that answer. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Evans?
Thank you. So I was kind of unsure when to provide my comments on this or other agenda item. Minor more comments than questions. My life in the past few years has been very enmeshed with this school project. I started out as an active Support South Windsor Schools member. I was then on the Board of Education throughout that period of time when we were working on the schools project. Chairman Zimmerman forgot to mention that I was also a liaison to PBC for a couple of years. I'm also an educator and a huge proponent of education. Not only that, but much like Councillor Leidecker, I am a PV parent. And where her youngest will be enjoying his last year in the new building, my youngest will be starting as a kindergartner at PV. So for me, this is a no-brainer. I'm invested in it. This is our third school. We cannot leave it behind. The PBC have proven themselves to be great stewards to these projects, so it leaves me no question that this is they will do the same with the fourth school, third project. We're really in unprecedented times, and I think we need to put this project in a position to be able to move nimbly and make decisions that are really going to allow it to be completed on time. So I am in full support of transferring the funds.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor Kubaski?
Thank you. Again, more comments, since I've already asked my question, but I am also in full support of moving the money over. In my time on the PBC as both chair and a member, I've worked with Collier's and Gilbane. They have my full confidence. I highly respect their opinion. I think Mr. Montana, coming in as chair as he did, has done a phenomenal job, far better than the chair he replaced. But I think at this point, it makes sense to move that money over. One of my concerns is I heard that there was possibility of trying to tap into the contingency to cover this. I think that's a huge error, only because what will happen is, and I know with the Orchard Hill project, when we were working on that. We didn't know what we didn't know. And my concern is if we tap into the contingency and pretty much evaporate what's out there now, while we have this available to us, if you tap into that now going forward, there's going to be some very tough decisions to make. And these are decisions that honestly we shouldn't have to make if we have another avenue available to us. And because of that, I fully support making this move. I think it's the right thing to do. And honestly, I think going any other route is a huge mistake. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Councillor Paterna? Thank you. Councillor Kubowski?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you all for coming tonight. I don't think you should leave tonight without firm belief that every member of this council is going to support this project moving forward. There is no doubt in our minds. I think I wasn't a member of the PBC, but I was an observer as a liaison. I know the hard work that goes into these projects. I know what value engineering sounds like, a very nebulous phrase, but there's a lot of hours of work when you start doing value engineering. I know that the diligence that you folks have put into it. So there is no doubt. I think there's some mechanical things in terms of how we transfer the money and all that, but there's no question in my mind that this should be moving forward, and you should be confident in moving on Wednesday that you'll get the support of this council and for this council member. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paterna. Any other comments? Not seeing any. I'd like to say for me, the questions were the how, when, where, and why. And so with looking through and coming up with my answers being the when, you need comfortability for Wednesday, I understand that. The why, the cost, and the increases with COVID. The where, from the two schools and the savings of the two schools, and now the how. And the how is the piece that I need to be comfortable with myself. And that's where I would like to speak to our finance director, if she's available, Mr. Maniscalco, to please explain to us the how and the proper way of doing the how to make this happen. And we also have our town attorney here who can guide us with the how to accomplish this and moving this forward. So if that would be however the staff feels that they'd like to present.
Certainly. So I could just run through real quickly some of the how, and then maybe Mrs. Perry can kind of back up some of the numbers. Essentially, the scenario that we're faced with is transferring funds from one fund to another fund, similar to like what we're doing with the FEMA project tonight. So in our charter, there's actually a section that outlines how that should be done for anything over $25,000. In order to do that, you would need to hold a public hearing. So on the table tonight, we did provide you with draft documents for that public hearing. And the numbers, we did fill in some numbers into that document. And I believe, as Chuck had mentioned to all of you, they've been truing up numbers with Mrs. Perry. And through that process, they've come out to identify they have about $1.2 million from Orchard Hill, and then 1.6 from PR Smith and Eli Terry at this point. You know, while those projects are complete to a degree, there are still activities occurring on them. They still need to go through a review from the state. We do still have, we are aware that the town has received an over reimbursement for Orchard Hill that we're expecting to have to pay back at some point. So the 2.8 is where we're comfortable at this point with moving forward for the project. Or moving from those projects to this project.
Correct. I understand. Is Ms. Perry here? There she is. Thank you.
Yes, good evening. I really don't have too much more to add what Mike said, but I just think, you know, conservatively transferring the 2.8 in total from phase 1 and 2 to phase 3 would be a good idea.
A good idea. Thank you.
Okay.
And I would just like to say, in my eyes, with this financial piece and knowing how well you work with the POs that come in from the various projects, and you know, do the dollars of plus and minuses along the way, you're the end-all, be-all answer to the math piece of things here. So that's why I wanted to hear from you on the 2.8. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your hard work. Thank you. And so at this time, does anyone else have any other questions? Not seeing any. What we're going to do is we're going to move on to letter A, 13A. And that's the discussion item. Mr. Maniscalco?
I think we've basically had this discussion already, in all
Correct.
honesty. So I don't know if there's a member of the council that would want to add a resolution setting a public hearing to the agenda, or?
Yep. Okay. And Deputy Mayor King, yes?
So we're just doing this resolution here, correct?
Yep, we're moving on to Councillor, okay. Yes,
So
Deputy Mayor.
basically, if I understood you correctly, we're moving on to this resolution of this here. Is that correct?
You're going to be adding that, you guys have to vote to add that item to the agenda, and then you need to actually act on
Can I
it.
make a motion to suspend our agenda to add a motion to hold a public hearing to transfer the funds from Orchard Hill Elementary School and the PRS Elementary School, Eli Terry Elementary School projects to the Pleasant Valley School projects. Do you want me to read this? Well, we have to vote on that first.
Yes, is there a second? Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. If you'd like to read the resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby sets Monday, January 3rd, 2021 at 8 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall, 1540 Sullivan Avenue, South Windsor, Connecticut, as a time and place for a public hearing to receive public input on the transfer of $1.2 million of the appropriated funds and any expended bond proceeds related thereto from the Orchard Hill Elementary School project, and $1.6 million of the appropriated fund and any unexpended bond proceeds related thereto from the Philip R. Smith Elementary School and the Eli Terry Elementary School projects to the Pleasant Valley Elementary School resolution to provide for additional contingency for the Pleasant Valley Elementary School project.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion on this? Mr. Maniscalco?
The one item I would like to add, just for the public to understand a little bit more, the reason that the council is able to do this and move these authorized but unissued funds is that when the bond resolutions are passed by both the town and the community through referendum, there is a line within there that allows those funds to be transferred to other referendum-approved projects.
Thank you. Councilor Leidecker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to say, because I was keeping my comments separate between H and A, but everybody kind of jumped in, so I just also want to make it clear I am 100% wholeheartedly in support of transferring these funds. This is very well deserved. I think it will be overwhelmingly supported in the public hearing too, if I may be so bold. But I just want the record clear that not only has PV skyrocketed, but I am in favor as well of making sure that there is a smooth pathway to get this school completed on time. Thank you.
Any other comments? I skipped over myself with the personal comments. I just have to say, and I just blew by it. My siblings were the first class at Pleasant Valley. I went to Pleasant Valley. I was a Pleasant Valley mom and a Pleasant Valley grandma. So been through the 4 generations there. All of us went there. So I'm excited and I support this wholeheartedly in bringing this forward to the public hearing and letting our citizens speak in support of this. Very, very important that they understand the need and the how, the when, the where, and the why. And that's very well explained this evening. I'd like to thank everyone involved in presenting this and bringing this forward. So if we could take a vote on this motion now. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries for the public hearing on January 3rd. Thank you. Each. Okay. And now we're moving on to 13H in our agenda. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Yep. Okay, 13H is Deputy Mayor King.
We have a resolution approving the transfer of FEMA storm and I want to make sure I pronounce this correctly. What is the correct pronunciation? Isaias? Isas. Funds to. Isas, okay. To 3 town projects and authorizing town manager Michael Maniscalco to sign and execute all necessary agreements, documents, and contracts. Whereas on August 4th, 2020, Tropical Storm Isas caused significant damage and power outages that lasted for days in the town of South Windsor. And whereas town departments responded to requests for service to clear roads and tree debris, and whereas on January 13, 2021, President Trump signed a federal emergency declaration so towns could begin to apply to FEMA for reimbursement of costs associated with Storm Isas. And whereas the town of South Windsor applied for and received $249,294.74 from FEMA, and whereas the town of South Windsor Emergency Management Department would like to reinvest these monies into 3 projects. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby approves the transfer of FEMA Storm Isas funds to 3 projects as follows: $10,000 for crisis track field technology, $80,000 to install emergency backup generators at Flax Hill and Wapping Muse community houses, and $50,000 to replace and repair emergency communication equipment located on the tower at the police department. And be it further resolved that the town council authorizes town manager Michael Maniscalco to sign and execute all necessary agreements, documents, and contracts to complete the above-mentioned projects.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor King. Is there a second? And any discussion? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries. And now I do believe, on J. Is that correct, Catherine? We're on J. Vanessa? Yep. Item J, and this is a discussion item requested by Councillor Paterna, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a discussion that I think some of us have had over the last few weeks, and I want to bring it to the council meeting and have Mr. Maniscalco also give us some feedback on it. There are other towns using the American Rescue Plan Act funds to redirect some of those monies to help small businesses. There's a couple of local towns who have done that. There's some difference of opinion about what we can and can't do, but I'd just like for us to explore that and take a look at local businesses. And that means businesses that are 10 employees or fewer. So I don't want Costco coming in to apply for a grant, you know, that kind of thing. So it should be locally owned, family-owned businesses or small businesses. Is there some way that we can put together a program that we may be able to help out and support them in some way? So I just want to throw the floor open for discussion and see what ideas people have, and ask Mr. Maniscalco, who probably give us an idea of legally what we can and can't do. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Paterna. A couple things. We certainly could enter into doing something like this. As you mentioned, other communities are doing doing that exact thing. One of the challenges with it, and one of the reasons why we've kind of steered away from it, is a couple facets to it. First of all, South Windsor's business community is a little different than some of the other communities that have entered into this type of a program. Our business community is a bit larger, in all honesty, and a bit more corporate focused, whereas some of the communities that are undertaking this currently don't have that corporate focused business community within them. And as a result, it's a little easier for them to implement this and make sure that the grant funds are meeting all of the guidelines. I would point out that in the event the Department of Treasury determines that those grant funds aren't used appropriately, they could come back to the town asking for those monies back, which was a risk that we were a bit concerned about. Lastly, we also felt that, you know, a lot of the small businesses if they had SBA loans, those SBA loans were put in forbearance for, I believe, at least 7 months, and were actually paid on their behalf by the Small Business Administration during the pandemic. Also, small businesses had access to PPP loans to hopefully keep their doors open and keep active through the pandemic. Lastly, so we thought those things were available to them. And then finally, we wanted to make sure that the projects that we chose for ARPA funds were going to be having the biggest impact for all of the community. Not just a specific sector or a specific business or a specific individual, but for the 27,000 residents within the community. So I think if you look at the projects that we chose, we really chose and focused on big picture, large capital projects that would help as many people as possible while meeting those Treasury guidelines. At this point, I think, unfortunately, like we heard with Pleasant Valley, a lot of those capital projects are coming in over budget. We did leave a small contingency for us to deal with those overages. Unfortunately, we're a bit concerned with how the rest of this is all going to play out. I would say that maybe a year from now, when we come back and we have additional funds available, maybe we can use those to do some type of a grant-funded program for businesses. But at this point, I think almost all the dollars are actually allocated to those capital projects that we've put out there. So.
Councilor Paterno, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Maniscalco, I know what you're saying is true about the structure and the businesses and the different types of businesses. One of the things that I've been hearing is that even though those PPP loans were available, many small businesses did not get them. And some of it was because of the red tape involved. Some of it was because of larger companies coming in and taking over some of that money. They were kind of frozen out of it. And then the second phase is when they try to contact the Small Business Administration today, it's very difficult to get through to them. Is there some way that we could host something in town where small businesses could meet here at Town Hall, for instance, with SBA representatives and have them walk them through the process and make it a little bit easier for our local businesses? Is that possible?
Definitely, definitely. Let me, maybe what I can do is reach out to the Chamber of Commerce as well as our local Congressman Larson's office, and see if we can get a representative from the SBA. And I believe the PPP loans came through the SBA as well.
I think they did, yeah.
I believe. So we'll make sure that we get a representative here that can maybe host a forum for some of our smaller businesses that might be interested, or at least regional or area businesses.
I'm just thinking maybe that's a good first step, and then 6 months or 8 months from now, if we have some additional dollars, maybe we do some grants, but in the meantime, let's try to give some support to small businesses as much as we can.
Certainly.
All right, and you know, I did send emails to both Congressman Larson and Senator Murphy's office, so I'm waiting for them to respond to see if they can help us with the Small Business Administration representatives.
Great.
So I will let you know.
Yeah,
All
if
right.
you'd like to loop me in, that'd be perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Paterno. Councilor Evans?
Thank you. I know, like, early on when we started these conversations, I remember Councilor Leidecker bringing up this idea, and we were very concerned with, you know, kind of that big book that you had mentioned, or the very thick, you know, manual of how we could use these. And I'm just curious if we've had conversations with other towns to see how they're navigating it, or where they're getting the information from that they think that this is an appropriate way to use them, so that maybe we could look into that and have some consideration for if those funds become available and be prepared.
Yes, I've had that conversation with my counterpart in the other community, and he's going to share with me the consultant that they're using to do that, as well as I actually know the consultant that they're using to do that, as well as the agreement that they're using.
Because if these funds do become available, it'd be great to be like set up and ready to go and be able to do these grants to businesses.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Councilor Decker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With all due respect, Mr. Maniscalco, I will say that I am a little frustrated. I think one of the comments I heard you say was all the funds were allocated. And as Councillor Evans just alluded to, this is something I had brought to your attention months ago, to start looking into some way of seeing if we could help these small businesses. So to hear that it's kind of a no, 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 no across the table, but other towns are using these funds for it, and South Windsor didn't allocate any of these funds for our small businesses, I am a little frustrated that we're waiting for another round. So I would like to make sure that this is followed up on, and that next time around, we do have some of these funds allocated in some way for something to help our business owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Leidecker.
It's surprising that you didn't know, because we've made like 2-3 public presentations and it's been on our website.
And these were conversations that you and I had had, and you had continued to say no, and you just allocated all the funds. But all I heard from you back then when we were having those conversations also was again, no. And that's what I'm hearing again tonight. And I don't think that that's what our town citizens and our business owners should be hearing is no across the board. They were hit hard in this pandemic. I think we need to acknowledge that. And we are getting funds in, and we're using that for, I believe, cell towers, and the like. I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, but there could also be a personal impact to these business owners as opposed to, say, a cell tower. So I do want to make sure that there are funds allocated to that, and we are fully fleshing out this program.
No, we're using them to renovate trails for residents, fitness centers for residents. We're using them to renovate sidewalks for residents, multiple things for residents. Just because something doesn't fit within the guidance, it's my responsibility.
Fitness centers aren't paying bills. Fitness centers aren't keeping the heat on. Fitness centers aren't putting food on the table. So again, I mean, we can sit here and go back and forth, and I'm perfectly happy to continue to spar with you, but this was something that was brought up months ago, so I do want to continue that we look into it as Councilor Paterna has asked.
Thank you, Councilor Leidecker. Deputy Mayor King.
The only comment I had, I just didn't want to only focus on businesses that are already in place. I think for me, one of the things that I would love to see us work more on are businesses that want to come to South Windsor that are small businesses, that are smaller, whether family-owned or the like. We have a bunch of, now that I've been on the town council for a little while, we have a bunch of young people and a little bit older that are trying to start their own business. We have a slew of entrepreneurs just from our own school system. And I would love to see some of those students that are graduating or high school or college or whatever, even though that may be a little bit out, to know that the town supports them as well as the Costco's, as the Aldi's, as the other huge corporations, because they will end up being taxpayers as well. So I appreciate what my fellow councilors are saying. And at the same time, I would love to see how that could also be worked out, as Councilor Paterna said, in the future. Not dismissing what we've already done and the plans that are in place on the website, but that, for me, that is very important that we kind of keep homegrown talent, if we can, in town. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Any other comments? Not seeing any. We can move on to item 14A, which is passage of ordinance. Councilor Paterna.
14A is a resolution adopting the proposed amendments to ordinance number 141, Agricultural Land Preservation Advisory Commission. Be it resolved that the South Windsor Town Council hereby adopts the proposed amendments to ordinance number 141, Agricultural Land Preservation Advisory Commission, as shown in Exhibit B.
Thank you, Councilor Paterna. Is there a second? Second. And is there any discussion on this? And with our town attorney here and noticing that this is an ordinance change, do you have any advisement on this ordinance change?
Oh, okay, sorry about that. No, I did review it. I didn't have any real concerns. The one change that I made comments on is that the membership is a little more fluid now. Instead of it being, a set number from each of the various groups, you've said, 2 to 4 farmers. I can't remember right off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me, but, and so I just wanted to caution you that obviously is going to put the onus on you as those nominations come in to make sure that you follow the minority representation rule at all times. So you're going to have to be very careful in doing your calculations to make sure that you do meet that, and make sure that you also don't go over 12 members. Because right now, you potentially could do that if you had the full complement of farmers and the full complement of, I think, other residents of the town. It would be actually more than 12. So I'm just saying, it's nothing wrong with having it be fluid, but you do have to make sure you keep track.
Thank you. Councilor Paterno?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Attorney Olson. And I did have a conversation with Mr. Kennedy, who chairs the commission, because I think one of the things they want to do is expand the at-large membership, that number. And I did make him aware of your concern that, look, when those nominations come in, it's still got to be based on that minority representation rule. So he's aware of that, and I think they'll be careful about how they accept nominations to make sure that representation is always there. So thank you.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Not seeing any? And the motion carries. Moving on to item 15, public input on any matter. Help yourself. Please.
Dave McDonald, 79 Laurel Street. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councilors, Mike, good evening. During the last 3 years that we and the previous town councils have been addressing the speeding issue on Laurel Street, it was stated many times that the steps taken on Laurel Street to curtail the speeding were to be an experiment to see what would work. We're here tonight to report our observations as to what has worked and what hasn't worked. The lighted speed indicating signs that were installed a little over a month ago have produced a slight improvement in the speed of the vehicles. The signs seem to alert and remind the responsible drivers that the speed limit is 25 miles an hour and they will slow down, as indicated by their brake lights. Then there are the drivers who don't seem to care about their speed, such as the late model blue pickup truck, among many others, that completely ignore the speed limit and lighted signs as they continue to speed up and down the street in the morning and evening. It seems they could be given a reminder by our town agency responsible for enforcing our laws that the speed limit also pertains to them as part of this experiment. Over the last 3 years, we have also discovered what doesn't work, such as ignoring the problem, the traffic calming policy that was passed by a previous town council, that doesn't work. Ignoring the residents' input doesn't work, and haphazard enforcement doesn't work. And these are all meant to be positive comments. We're hopeful that the South Windsor communities that have a speeding problem won't have to endure the delays that we endured to get their problem worked on. And we ask that you, our councilors, listen to residents' concerns and act on them. Remember, you folks represent us, and we look to you for protection, whether it's about speeding, overdevelopment, health issues, or any other concerns that may come up. Thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Is there any other public input on any matter? Anyone else like to speak? Come right ahead.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dave Seamer, 74 Laurel Street. Just as a follow-up of what Mr. McDonald has just said about the speeders, I've noticed that every day during the week that there is an elementary school bus that stops at the corner of Birch Road and right in Laurel Street in front of 63 Laurel Street. In fact, there are several parents there also in their right in their vehicles waiting for their children to get off the bus. I've noticed that it's a time of day when it's usually the same vehicles are are right exceeding the speed limit. The white light on your, right on the speed limit sign is definitely flashing. These are the same vehicles, as I say, most every day, and they're obviously they're taking a shortcut instead of the stop signs on right on Avery Street and Kelly Road. And you know, if just a little show of enforcement, you know, might just take care of this problem. It's dangerous. And Merry Christmas to everybody, and have a very Happy New Year.
Thank you, same to you. Thank you for speaking. Anyone else for public input on any matter? Anyone else? Not seeing any. Moving on to item 16, communications from the council. I received an email that says, "Dear Manchester and South Windsor leadership, I enjoyed a pleasant evening in your jurisdiction on November 26, 2021. Alex and I followed our jam session among the wares of Guitar Center with a nice sushi dinner at Sakura. Thank you for providing the opportunities for such lovely entertainment options in your area. All the best, Melissa A. Kotulski." So I shared that with the council members and reading it to the public, and thank you, Melissa, for sending that in to the council. Moving on in the agenda, we are now at item 17, executive session. Deputy Mayor King, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For the executive session for number 17, I'd please like to invite the town manager, Michael Maniscalco, the assistant town manager, Mrs. Perry, and assistant town manager, Mr. Roberts, and any other appropriate personnel that are deemed necessary. Do I need to read A, B, and C as well?
Yes.
A, to discuss the possible purchase of real estate for the town pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 1-206D, Dart Hill Road. Letter B, to discuss a personnel issue, which is the position of the clerk of the council. And letter C, to discuss pending litigation, 460 Miller Road, pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 1-210B4 and 1-206E.
Is there a second? And all those in favor? Aye. Okay, and the motion carries. We will be adjourning our meeting within the executive session. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays. Stay safe and healthy.